Calaroga Shark Media.
Today's going to be angsty. I'm going to try and keep it fun, but I'm not sure I'm going to succeed. Hello, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. I've played with the show order several times today, and I'm like, all right, let me start with the fun stuff up first before we really get to it. But even this first story annoys me. From Netflix, the headline, Pete Davidson to host new weekly video podcast from his garage. Now, I'll push back on that headline in a minute, but first let me tell you the story. From the Netflix site, when Saturday Night Live alum Pete Davidson heads into his garage, turns on some cameras, and starts talking to his friends, you might think he's fixing his car or trying to find a hammer. Not in Davidson's case. He's filming a podcast for Netflix, which feature candid, no-holds-bars conversations. I'm trying not to jump in here. All right, keep going, John. The Pete Davidson Show, a new video podcast, will be exclusive on Netflix starting Friday, January 30th at 12:01 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So let me translate that. So that means it comes out Friday at 3 a.m. on the East Coast, so you watch it on Fridays. Episodes drop every week. Pete will shoot the podcast primarily from his garage, where all the best conversations happen. But he will occasionally take the show on the road. Pete said Netflix was the home of one of my first stand-up specials, so it felt right to bring the podcast there too. It's me and my friends talking about anything and everything. It's going to be a great time. It's good that you feel that way about Netflix. Remember you had a show on Peacock, and you walked away from it, and people lost their jobs, Pete? Remember that one? Remember Lorne Michaels? He was good to you, but hey, Netflix, they're making quote-unquote podcasts now. Now, as a podcaster, this has me up in arms. Listen to me. Write this down. In no way whatsoever is this thing a podcast. This is a TV show. It may be a very inexpensively produced TV show. It may be a casual TV show. But this is in no way a podcast because I will refer to you to Netflix's own language, exclusively available on Netflix. That's not a podcast. That's a Netflix show. Is Stranger Things a podcast? That's available exclusively on Netflix. Why isn't Stranger Things a podcast? Clearly, Stranger Things is a podcast, is it not? So this just as a podcaster annoys me. That aside, should we just start taking bets on when Pete Davidson walks away from this? Because he does have a history of walking away from projects. And I wish him well, and I know he struggles with mental health. But I'm just looking at this, and I got my podcast nose out of whack on this story. But how long is Pete actually going to do this? We'll find out. We'll be tracking this. Told you today's going to be angsty. That's not even the angsty part. That's the fun part. Taylor Tomlinson has inked a deal for another Netflix special, this one called Prodigal Daughter. It will premiere February 24th. It is Taylor Tomlinson's fourth for Netflix. Prodigal Daughter was taped at Fountain Street Church in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Bobby Lee, now we're going to find out if his career has peaked because he is doing a stand-up special on Hulu. And you know Johnny Mac's theory on hilarious specials. When you get a special on Hulu, you might be a little past your peak. Now here's a name to keep your eye on. Nikki Glaser. We're at peak Nikki Glaser now. Everyone, including me, is favorable towards Nikki Glaser right now, but her next special will be on Hulu. We'll see how the hilarious jinx goes for Nikki Glaser. I digress. Bobby Lee is getting a special on Hulu. No description, no release date, but it did make the trades. Bobby Lee's filming the special at the Balboa Theater in San Diego this weekend. And out tomorrow on Hulu, Bob the Drag Queen has a comedy special. It's called This Is Wild. Brian Volkweiss, who's a good guy, worked with him in the past. He's one of the producers over at Comedy Dynamics. He said Bob's new special is absolutely hilarious front to back. Bob is one of those performers that seems to have been born for the stage and that shines through in her new special. Brian really knows comedy, so I respect that opinion a lot. Oh, while I'm throwing bricks today, Amazon Prime Video has picked up the animated comedy series Odd Jobs. In Odd Jobs, the year is 2027. The world is in an extreme late-stage capitalist hellscape. The show follows a reluctant team of gig workers as they travel around the neo-Midwest, doing the weirdest, most dangerous things the Odd Jobs app demands. And here's my problem with this one. One of the co-creators is Mike McMahon. Who's that? He's one of the people involved with Kurtzman's Star Trek. Now, he made the Lower Decks series, which a lot of people like, and I just can't stand because it doesn't belong in Star Trek. I like Rick and Morty. I like Star Trek. I don't need the two to cross. So he's on my list of comedy people destroying Star Trek. So Mike McMahon, Patton Oswalt, who played Doug the Vulcan, don't get me started, Tig Notaro, part of that horrible Star Trek Discovery, and Gina Yashir is part of this new terrible Starfleet Academy show. Don't even start me. I mentioned Trevor Noah is hosting the Grammys, and I was like, did I ever do the story of the Grammy nominations? And I looked, and I'm like, oh, it came out the day I flew to go visit my daughter and got into the airport at 2 a.m. I think I may have missed this one, and that is why. It was a Friday, and I had pre-taped the weekend, and like I said, I got in very late, so it was probably that. We're a couple weeks away from the Grammys, but the nominations for Best Comedy Album, and by Best Comedy Album, the Grammys people mean Best TV Special. Want to impress me? Put out a CD. I've gotten on that soapbox for years and years and years now. Anyway, the Grammys define comedy album as things containing greater than 75% playing time of new recordings. So the word there is recording, as opposed to me, who would like, an album. Like Born in the USA, that's an album. That's not a Netflix special. Although Netflix would probably say Born in the USA is a podcast. I digress. Your nominees are Drop Dead Years by Bill Burr. No. Postmortem by Sarah Silverman. That should win. Single Lady by Ali Wong. My former coworker Jamie Foxx's What Had Happened Was. And Nate Bargatze's Your Friend Nate Bargatze. I would pick Sarah out of that group, and who the Academy will pick, I have no idea. All right, on to the feisty stuff. See, that was the happy part of today's podcast. Really, John? Yeah, really. On to the feisty stuff. Jay Leno, that guy's the worst. He says modern comedy is overshadowed by the outrageous society we live in, as if Jay Leno knows anything about performing stand-up comedy. Has he ever been on a stage? Jay was on Maria Shriver's podcast and said, people always say, oh, I bet you missed it with Trump being president. No, not really. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. You kind of do it. Psychologists used to say the punchline of the joke would be like, that's like the president with a stripper. Okay, now the president's with strippers. Shriver asked if Jay Leno envied today's late-night scene or if he was glad he wasn't part of it. Jay said, you can't. We live in a society where there's nothing you could say that's so outrageous because comedy comes from a place of conservatism. You start with a sort of moral high ground. Jay told an anecdote about performing at a prison. I had an act about meeting women. I said, when you see a girl, you're not quite sure how to approach her. This guy yells out, just punch her in the face and F her, and they all cheer. And I go, okay, I'm playing a prison. The idea of approaching and it just made me laugh because the cultural wars of the prisoner are not really the same ones I'm dealing with here. Shriver said it was like what used to be off limits is now real, and what was shocking is now every day. Leno said, that's why it's fun to go the other way. I just like to work clean because it requires a bit more thought, and it makes it trickier. We live in a society now where people just whatever they're into, there's an audience for that, and you just play to that audience. Jay says his ticket sales have gone up since taking politics out of his act. I'm on the road a lot. I just took politics out of it completely. I know ticket sales are up 20-30% just because nobody wants to be lectured. So, I get it, and I disagree. And now we're up to the angsty part of the show, and I know this next section might cost me some listeners, but, I'll try and do this through the lens of comedy, but I got to tell you what's bugging me. And I'm of the belief, if you have a show, whether it's a dopey podcast in your basement or it's an 11:30 show on a network, you got to use your platform sometimes when you have it. One person using his platform is Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan has compared some of the recent stories involving ICE to the Gestapo. And that got me thinking, the president losing Joe Rogan is like the ridiculous 2026 version of LBJ losing Cronkite. Comparing Joe Rogan to Cronkite is like comparing any other president to this one. If you're not familiar, in 1968, Walter Cronkite, on the news, said, it seems now more certain than ever that the bloody experience of Vietnam is to end in a stalemate. This is 1968. To say we are closer to victory today is to believe, in the face of evidence, the optimists who have been wrong in the past. To suggest we're on the edge of defeat is to yield to unreasonable pessimism. To say that we are mired in a stalemate seems the only realistic yet unsatisfactory conclusion. It is increasingly clear to this reporter that the only rational way out then will be to negotiate, not as victors, but an honorable people who lived up to their pledge to defend democracy and did the best they could. So that's when LBJ lost Cronkite. And in 2026, I think the President of the United States has lost Joe Rogan. Now, I'm sensitive to this story. I'll tell you something from my little corner of the world. This from Eyewitness News 7. They're discussing a raid that happened over the weekend at a laundromat at Speedwell Avenue and Henry Street in Morristown, New Jersey. Now, I'll tell you, if I went out to my driveway and I threw a Frisbee really hard and the wind caught it, it might land in the laundromat over by Morristown and Morristown High School. ICE raided a laundromat. One of the people rounded up was a 17-year-old who apparently has a 4.2 GPA at the high school. The 17-year-old's being held at a federal detention facility. His brother said that the boy is very scared He's in pain for the injuries he has, and he's worried about his family, worried about his brother here and his mother back in Honduras. 2 women say they spoke to a relative of one person who was taken. I'm not sure if this is the boy or someone else. One of the women said, he came in to do his laundry, and his cousin told me he was taken. He was just cleaning his clothes, and he was taken. A lot of people were taken. The eyewitnesses say that included the father of a 6-year-old girl, and the child was left alone on the street until other adults stepped in. Here's Joe Rogan.
I can also see the point of view of the people that say, yeah, but you don't want militarized people in the streets just roaming around, snatching people up, many of which turn out to actually be U.S. citizens that just don't have their papers on them. Are we really going to be the Gestapo? Where's your papers? Is that what we've come to? So it's more complicated than I think people want to admit. You know, people want to look at this as a black and white issue, if you're a compassionate person or if you're a pragmatic person. And I don't think that's true. I think it's both.
I'm with Joe. Complicated issue, but really, we're just going to start knocking down doors and shooting people in the street? No. Sticking with ICE for a second from Boing Boing, comedian Ben Palmer's motto is, you can be anything. And over the years, Ben has pretended to be anything from GPT to Cracker Barrel to poke fun at right-wing outrage. His latest thing is pretending to be an ICE agent. Here's a quick clip.
I made a website for reporting illegal immigrants. And people end up on the site thinking that it's real. And I talked to one lady who wanted to report every Uber driver that picked her up, claiming that they're all using fake driver's licenses to work for Uber.
And I listened to the thing and I thought about playing it, but with the people calling in, it just felt a little too awkward for me, and I didn't want to go there. But, I like the premise of what he's doing there. And while we're being political, Noah Wyle was on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Noah Wyle plays a doctor on The Pit. You may also know Noah Wyle from playing a doctor on ER many years ago. Anyway, I thought this was really on point. It's a little long here, but here's Noah Wyle into the break.
The measles vaccine will turn your son into a furry. A pansexual furry. Hi, I'm Noah Wyle. I played Dr. Michael Robbie Rabinovich on The Pit. I also played Dr. John Carter on ER, but I am not a real doctor. Just like most of you are not real doctors. I was cast because I have a trustworthy face and can convincingly deliver complicated medical lines like, I'm sorry, Mr. Horvath. I'm afraid that you have advanced sphenopalatine ganglion neuralgia. I have no idea what I just said. But that doesn't matter. Because when it comes to medicine, I do my own research, and I go with my gut. For instance, I know that raw milk is good for you, but raw chicken? Even better. Especially when it comes in a smoothie. I know that 5G towers give you COVID, and that vitamin C isn't real. It was created by Tropicana to sell juice. The flu vaccine will take 4 inches off your penis, or vagina. And if you take probiotics and antibiotics at the same time, you will achieve the perfect level of biotics. Yes? Hello? This is he? Yes, I would be honored to head up the Center for Disease Control. No, thank you, Mr. President. Well, it looks like I'm a medical expert after all. I'm Noah Wyle. Don't do anything until I say it's okay.
This has been a message from the CDC.
You guys still with me? How many people did I lose there? All right, let's take a look at Comedy Survivor. Are you playing Comedy Survivor? You go to the Facebook group, which is Daily Comedy News Podcast Group. There's a little drawing there of me extinguishing the torch of Amy Schumer, and you get to vote. I'm just scrolling down here. I see a Leslie Jones vote has crept in, a Seth Meyers vote. A little bit of Sandler action going on. I think Adam Sandler could go this week. Now, today is the final day of voting for week 2, so head on over there to the Daily Comedy News Podcast group on Facebook. Make your vote clear. Write down a name. Don't make me think about it. If you want to vote off Joe Schmo, write Joe Schmo. Now, Joe Schmo is not one of the survivors. The remaining survivors are Sandler, Leno, Joe Coy, Gaffigan, Glazer, Seth Meyers, Kevin Hart, Mulaney, Otzko, Sebastian, Tig, Sarah Silverman, Leslie Jones, Ron White, Bert Kreischer. Write down one of those names. And then what's going to happen is at the end of the day today, the voting ends, and then tomorrow I'll count the votes and I'll produce up an episode, and then Monday at noon Eastern I'll drop a bonus episode telling you who's out, and we'll head on to week 3 Comedy Survivor in the Daily Comedy News Podcast group. Kim Wayans has launched a new YouTube comedy series called Still Got It with Izzy Fabulous. It features Kim Wayans as Izzy, a confident life coach navigating love, aging, and identity with humor. The series is described as character-driven. The first episode is titled Girl, Listen to Your Sister and features her famous brother, Sean Wayans, as the director and producer. And I'll leave you with some advice from Bert Kreischer. His advice, bust your ass in business so you can take your kids on vacation. Bert said, it's not about the big house. It's about the experiences with your family and being able to do cool stuff with your kids, do cool stuff with your wife, being able to afford to send them to college. He said his favorite house he ever owned wasn't the biggest. It was an 1,100 square foot house that smelled like family and sounded like family. But even after making $33 million in a single year, Bert discovered, I guess my bills are paid. I don't think I'd notice between $100 million and $10 million. Somewhere in there is good advice, but, your head explodes at the you only made $33 million? Okay. But he's on point. Do cool stuff with your wife. Do cool stuff with your family. Time goes by fast. And that is your comedy news for today. Weird one today. See you tomorrow.